He asks God the hard questions, and his perspective is absolutely gone. He's hopeless. What do you expect of God? God's unfailing love, right? That's why they call it unfailing. Slow to anger, abundant in compassion. His promises, his concern, his protection, his provision. I mean, this man has experienced this all his life, and now it's dark. It's so dark, it's not like there's even a light at the end of the tunnel that could be a train. I mean, it's just dark, dark, dark. And basically what he says to God is this it? And I want to suggest that that's one of the most healthy things you can ever do when your hope is lost. Ask hard questions. Now, by the way, when your kids or when you're with a friend and they start saying some of these things, as a Christian, here's what we do sometimes dangerously. You know what? God didn't come through for me. I can't believe it. She walked out on me. You know what? I was faithful, and you know what? I didn't get the job, and man, this sucks. This is terrible. You know what? That coach, all those people, I think I'm gonna, and what our temptation is, it'll be okay. It'll be okay. Everything's gonna be all right. When people are beginning to ask honest questions, what you need to say is, I think we need to tell God that. Why don't you just tell him that right now? And then listen very carefully. And then watch for mood swings. I don't know all the history of what's happened above Seattle. But a guy was a good student. He was on the homecoming court, broke up with his girlfriend. Loss, rejection, hope gone. See, when we put our hope in people and we put our hope in things, we put our hope in teams, in the video that we saw, here's a guy that his whole world was sports, and then he gets cut from a team. You telling me he wasn't depressed? You telling me he didn't lose perspective? I mean, how do you go from a great family, a great experience, to shooting someone? See, we need to be very astute. When people get depressed, listen carefully, really, really good people, okay? Really, really godly people do some very irrational things, either to themselves or with others. And so, as a parent, you want to be asking questions and not always trying to soothe everything and everything's okay. As a friend, when you start seeing some of this, now obviously every time you get with them, if they're vetting about this and venting about that, and you need to put up the stop sign and say, you want help here? But you need to be when people get to these places, and then when you watch, if they start their behavior, they start to withdraw. You can kind of see it on their face. They're going to have mood swings. Behaviors, if they drink a little, they start drinking a lot. If they begin to have escapism behavior and their eating patterns change, their sleeping patterns change, it's lots of video games. They don't show up for things. Now they don't seem to be very interested in spiritual things. All those are clues where we help our brothers and sisters or our kids. And what we need to do is make sure that those hard questions are ones that we say, hey, I need to get those before God. God can handle those. I don't need to defend him. But we need to help people process, because if they shove them down, really, really bad stuff happens. Now, verse 10, thank God that the psalm turns. I mean, it goes from it's not looking very good. And he does something. He chooses to redirect his thoughts. And the fourth lesson is choose to redirect your thoughts. Follow along in verse 10. Notice the word then. You might put like a triangle around then. Okay? I cried out to the Lord. There's no help. Life is terrible. I can't believe it. I can't sleep. It's your fault. I've kind of tried to recall some blessings and it's not doing very well. Then I thought, to this I will appeal. The years of the right hand of the Most High. I will remember the deeds of the Lord. Yes, I will remember your miracles of long ago. I will meditate on your works and consider all your mighty deeds. Did you notice that, number one, he's making a choice? Notice in the notes it says, choose to redirect your thoughts. You might go back through and, did you notice? I will, I will, I will, I will. Look at your notes. Underline it each time. See, when you're depressed, you come to this place and you're right at this crossroads. You're at this crossroads and you're either going to go down, doobie-doo-doo, down, 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 or you're going to make a choice and you're going to change your thinking. And then did you notice? I will remember, I will remember, I will remember, I will consider, I will meditate. All those are active thinking words. So he makes a choice and he's going to think, he's going to remember. And what does he meditate and remember? What's it say? On miracles of the past. I'm going to make my case before the Most High. And then he uses this word, the Most High, El Elyon. It's a name for God, that God, you are the creator and you are the preserver and sustainer of all. And then later on he talks about, I'll remember the works of the Lord. In your notes, it's capital L-O-R-D, right? Whenever it's capital L, capital O, capital R, capital D, the translators are saying this is God's covenant game, Yahweh. The I am that I am. So something big is happening. He's making a choice. Not his circumstances, not his feelings. He's still in the dark, but he's going to choose to think, to remember, to meditate, to consider, and he's going to look on the facts, the miracles, where God's been faithful in the past. And as he thinks on God's acts, it will lead him to consider God's ways. Who are you, God? See, here's what depression does. It alters your perspective. You begin to think negatively. You begin to think unrealistically. You begin to think in a way that is unbiblical and untrue. But when you begin to think negatively, unbiblically, and untrue, then you begin to look at yourself differently. You look at others differently. Then your actions will follow. I just did a little 8-day teaching that I had signed up for about a year ago. And you never know how this part of your life and the new parts of your life intertwine. And so I'd been teaching 7 weeks in a row here. And then I needed to be in Dallas Seminary, had their 90th anniversary. It was a real honor and a privilege, and I got to speak at that, and there was a meeting the night before, a lunch before that, and then I went to Atlanta, and so I flew again, another time frame, and then I had a dinner and spoke that night, and then interacted with people, then got up and spoke 2 more times that morning and interacted with people. Had a little break on Saturday, and I felt myself getting depressed, so I went down and got a workout, and I just didn't want to, just force myself to do that. I traveled on Monday, then I made myself, so it was Dallas, Atlanta, then New York, and about 450 pastors showed up that were just some of the most wonderful guys I'd ever been around. And so I taught for an hour, 3 different times, and then Q&A with pastors in between each time. Had just enough time to come back and finish up my notes that I emailed back so I would be ready. And then that night, about 1,500 people showed up. And it's a place where we've been on the air for about 15 years, just really warm people. So I was tired, so I spoke for an hour instead of 45 minutes. But they were very patient. And then afterwards, people lined up for an hour and a half to tell their stories. And then I got on a plane and flew all day from Elmira to Detroit, from Detroit to Atlanta. Got on a plane at 8 o'clock in Atlanta, and East Coast time got in about 2 a.m. on Wednesday night. Well, then I'd been out, so then I had meetings all day Thursday to get all caught up. Well, guess what happened on Friday? I was depressed. And it's not, I don't think this was God saying, you really need to get this afresh so that you'll know how to really communicate this. But I was just, everything I just said now, it was sort of like gray, bluish funk. It wasn't the absolute dark kind. I've got various levels of depression. I don't get depressed very often, but when I do, I go, I'm a pretty optimistic person. We all have different personality types and backgrounds, and I'm up in general. But when I get fatigued, when I go down, realize I get about here, and when I get here, it can go like South Pole deep very quickly. And Teresa is always very encouraging. And so I was very moody and not very fun to be around. And I thought, well, maybe I'll try and go get a workout because I couldn't stand to be living with me. And And so I walked out, and she said something very kindly. You got to have truth, people. She goes, well, because of your travel and I was helping the grandkids, we really haven't seen each other that much, and this is kind of a bummer a day because this is our day. To which I thought, absolutely. And I walked out ready to get a workout, and I have a little bench in front of my house. So I sat on the bench, and the sun was down. They were coming, and sometimes the sunlight helps. I try every trick I know. And I just was like, everything in me was like, I don't care. I don't care. I don't want to preach. I don't want to talk. I don't want to be around anyone. I'm recognizing all these things. I'm living in them. And then in the back of my mind, I just thought, I'm also being so self-centered and so selfish. And what a way to treat my wife after being not around for 7 or 8 days. And as I sat there on the bench, it was literally, I just came to this. You know those crossroads in your mind? And the Spirit of God was not very loud. Sometimes how it's, wow, God spoke to me. Well, sometimes it's God whispers. And when I'm really starting to get depressed, his voice gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And I just heard this little whisper. You got a choice to make. You can choose to remember, you can choose to give thanks, you can choose to bank on what's actually true, you're on your way down and it doesn't look good. The rest of this day, you've treated your wife this way, you've not been very... And as I sat on the bench, I literally just said, okay. And I started with my kids. God, thank you for Annie. God, thank you for Jason. Thank you for Eric. Thank you for Ryan. Then I went through all my grandkids. Then I prayed for every elder. Then I prayed for every staff member. Then I thought of anything good that has happened last 7 or 8 or 10 days. Then I thought about you. And I just thank God, 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 until I couldn't think of anything to thank him. And you know what happened? The iceberg of depression started to melt a little bit. And then I realized it's not just thinking, I got to do something. So I went back in, and this was my big joke. I said, honey, my workout was great. I was only out there like 15 minutes, And she goes, that wasn't very long. I said, yeah, it was a super duper one. Do you want to go grab a cup of coffee? And I'll run that errand with you. We had to take the dog to a doctor or something. And she just, yes. The whole rest of our day was really good. Very refreshing. Here's what you got to understand. Crossroads. Crossroads. You cry out to God. And after you cry out to God, then you have to recall past blessings. And then you ask God hard questions. You choose to redirect your thoughts. You just choose to. And it doesn't feel like it. I'm going to give you some very practical ways in a minute. And then fifth, magnify God to diminish your problems. See, if you begin, here's what happened. I started thanking him for these people, and I thought, wow. And then I actually went and I thought, wow, you know what? I was so nervous about that thing at Dallas Seminary, and I was really intimidated doing it. Thank you, that went well. And I met with those people, and then I started rehearsing those stories that some of those pastors told me, and I thought, who am I to get to be involved in this? Well, my thinking started changing. And then what happened is pretty soon my view of God. God's not distant. He loves me. He's for me. He cares about me. My wife wants to be around me, and I've been a not very nice person to be around. She cares about, who am I to have kids like this and grandkids like this and to get to minister with people like you all? And all of a sudden, that crossroads, pretty soon, reciting God's acts, his miracles, what he's done, you get a different view of God. Notice what the psalmist does here, beginning in verse 13. He now goes from his acts, he's meditated on the miracles. He goes, your ways, O God, are holy. Can you feel the difference? What God is as great as our God? You are the God who performs miracles. You display your power among the peoples. With your mighty arm, you redeemed your people from the descendants of Jacob and Joseph. The waters saw you. Speaking of the Red Sea, he's going back. This is what they always do when they get really discouraged. They always go back to that defining moment, out of Egypt, Red Sea. And the picture that he uses, he goes, the waters, literally, the Red Sea saw you, O God. They saw you and they withered from the very depths and were convulsed. The clouds poured down water. The skies resounded with thunder. Your arrows flashed back and forth. This is a picture of he's going to go to the Red Sea, and out of the Red Sea, what he's bringing to mind is Sinai. Remember? When God gave the 10 Commandments and it began to shake, and then there were peals of thunder, and then there was lightning, and all the people went, "Aah!" And it was like, and he's going back and going, that's the God I serve. I'm not going to have a pity party. This is a God who does the impossible, the miraculous. This is the God who has great acts but gives great words and promises of hope. And I'm a part of that. He goes on to say, your thunder was heard in the whirlwind, your lightning lit up the world. The earth trembled and quaked. Considering and remember God acts leads. Notice what? Your ways are holy, totally set apart. It's a formidable word in this context. It refers to coming before the God who is unapproachable light. And as a foe, unbelievably intimidating. And as a friend, unbelievably comforting. Your ways are holy. They're set apart. They're pure. They're good. And then notice his ways are not only holy, they're powerful. You got power. I'm not inept. I'm not stuck. There's not any way out. There was the Red Sea, and then there was that army, and he's going to start reciting in his mind and in his heart all the miracles, all the miracles, all the miracles, all the miracles. And pretty soon his God gets big again. And not only is he powerful, but he's tender, he's caring. Notice he says, you're the Redeemer. It's a Hebrew word that means you have to be a part of a kinsman redeemer. There has to be a relationship. And what he's saying is, your tender-hearted relationship, holy and awesome, the Creator, you speak the galaxies into existence in this great power that can do and overcome any impossible situation, and yet you're this tender God who would buy back and redeem his people like a shepherd and put them over his shoulders and care for them and love them. All of a sudden, he has a caring, loving, powerful, holy God. Because here's the deal. When you magnify God, here's what happens to my problems. And on that park bench right in front of our house, they were right about here. And no matter what I looked at, bummer, dark, gray. And then I prayed, and then I thanked, and then I prayed, and then I thanked, and then I thanked, and then I remembered. And pretty soon there was a big oak tree, and there was sun, and there was light, and there were promises, and there were children, and there were grandchildren, and there were blessings, and there were people, and there were staff members, and there were elders, and there were past history. And all of a sudden, that didn't go away. I still had to fight. But big God, small problems. Big problems, small God. It's a lot of work. The final thing that happens is he trusts God for future deliverance. When he started out, he's crying out, he can't sleep, he's bummed out, it's probably God's fault. And now, notice what he says, your path. Now he's looking at the relationship. Your path led through the sea, not around it. Your path led through the impossible situation. Your way through the mighty waters, though your footprints were not seen. You led your people like a flock by the hand of Moses and Aaron. God's former path, his way, his holiness through an impossible situation in the past. And notice how did he do it? He did it mysteriously. He said, your footprints weren't seen, you did it. And then notice how he did it. He said, you shepherd us like a flock, and you used people. At times you intervened in amazing, miraculous ways, but you shepherd us, you loved us through Moses and Aaron. And could I remind you that God will deliver you, but the way he'll deliver most of us most of the time is through another caring person. And that's why you can't keep this stuff inside. You go to God first. So let's do a quick review. You cry out to God. You recall past blessings. You ask God the hard questions. You choose to redirect your thoughts. You magnify God to diminish your problems. And then you trust God to be your deliverer. What he did in the past, he'll do in the future. In fact, I have a little, I have a sheet of paper on it. I wrote perspective, and then I just listed 10 things that whenever I get really, really discouraged or depressed, and that God did in our journey. They're sort of like the big mile markers. And, number one, we didn't have any food, didn't have any money, 5 bags of groceries landed, yet we told no one. I couldn't get a credit card, and I knew the bank president personally. That was in the early days. And God allowed us to buy a house. Then I got a $1,000 check from a football quarterback when we were out of money and couldn't pay our rent. Green Bay Packers, go Aaron Rodgers. It wasn't him, but it was an earlier quarterback. Finding a home. We made it through cancer. I had a son on a table with appendicitis, and it was bursting, and they said, we got to operate right now. Let us check one more time. And I remember being in there with Teresa, laying our hands on him and praying for him. And they came back, and you know what? We don't know what happened. We don't need to do surgery. Supernaturally delivering one of my kids that was far from God came back around. My salvation, I go back to being in that auditorium and being far from God and hearing the Lord's Prayer sung and understanding the gospel. And Revelations 3:20, behold, I stand at the door and knock. If any person would open the door of your heart, I will come into him. And I'll sup with him. I'll love you. I'll forgive you. And then I look back on 30 plus years and I think, oh God, where would I be? Yes, I'm bummed out today. Yes, I've lost perspective. Yes, I wasn't a very good husband. Yes, I'm moody right now. But oh God, where would I be? Are you getting the idea? Turn to the back page. I want to give you something really, really practical to walk away with. I want you to do, this is an action plan to overcome depression. And as you see this, number one, examine your thinking, okay? This is where you start. I was sitting on that bench realizing, how am I thinking? Answer, not good. Do you recognize that it's normal to feel depressed now and then? Some of you just turn on the guilt meter. I'm depressed, I'm a terrible person. No, you're depressed, okay? Second, is your focus on the pressure and problems you're experiencing or on your response to those pressures and problems? It sounds subtle, but it's a big difference. If you keep focused on the problem, it grows. Stop and focus. What's my response? I got to think differently. I choose to think. What's my response? Second, examine your behavior. Are you choosing positive or negative responses to your depression? Some positive responses, you get busy. You go get a workout. You go help someone else. You stop introspecting. You go take a walk. You write a letter. You act. You don't sit around when you're depressed. Don't eat when you're depressed. Don't sit in front of a TV and watch movies when you're depressed. You'll go from a level 5 depression to a level 9 to a 10. Pray. Get in God's Word. Put in a teaching CD or MP3. Put on positive, encouraging music. You gotta fight. You gotta break out of the fog and the blue and the down. Negative responses, eating, TV, shop, self-talk, I'm a terrible person, sinking, sleeping, illicit sex, porn, daydreaming, escapism behavior, suicide. You gotta ask my behavior. Have you willfully stopped to recall God's blessings in your past? And this sounds hokey, but I'm telling you it works. Pull out pictures of your family, pictures of your wedding, slides, albums, old videos. Pull out an old journal. Read when you were close to God. I have a napkin exercise. When I'm not around and I feel it coming on, I get a napkin, stop at a coffee shop, and I list as many things on one side of a napkin, blessing, 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 flip it over, and keep writing. And all it does is, it's just, wait a second. My perspective isn't true, but my mind and my heart don't feel that. And then finally, examine your future. Can the God who did so much in your past handle what you're facing today? I mean, that's logical, right? I mean, do you remember when you were in your marriage? Do you remember when one of your kids were? Do you remember when you thought you'd never get married? Do you remember when you had that illness? Remember when you had cancer? Remember when you went belly up financially and, right? You got a history. You think the God that took care of that one can take care of the next one? It's not hopeless. It's not dark. It just feels that way. Finally, is there a specific positive step you could take to thank God or to help someone else in order to demonstrate your confidence in God's love? See, it gets back to faith. See, actually, here's what happens. what actually happens is, I remember Carl Menninger, the great psychologist, there was a guy that was clinically depressed. They gave him medicine. They did shock treatment. Nothing worked. And he just wanted to die. And finally said, we have an emergency here. A guy came into him. He goes, a guy 2 doors down, he's going to die. And he's going to die here in about 3 days. I have no one available. Would you please just be with him? Just take 5 minutes of your time. Oh, I can't, I'm not worth, oh, you don't have to be worth anything. I just need a body. Got the guy to go 3 doors down in the hospital and sat next to a guy who was dying. When he began to care and think about someone else, bam, depression lifted. It's one of the greatest things you can do. Get depressed, man, I'm going to help somebody. I could be dangerous right now. I'm really going to help somebody. It's a battle that we all face. But God wants you to find him in the midst of that.